They not all know that they don't all have to sit back today. We're not full. Lisa. Lisa. Yes.
So Dave, just 5 and 6? Just 5 and 6? We don't need the 2 properties.
Okay.
Yeah, so just the other two.
To hold or
Personnel
continue
and
5.
litigation.
Oh. Not personnel. Human resources. We legally changed that in a commission meeting, didn't we?
No, weren't you the one that was just telling me a few minutes ago?
That's why.
Sure, they've changed.
I know.
What are you doing to us?
But they've got one name.
All I'm saying is the verbiage, I'm pretty sure on the is personnel, right?
That's because it keeps getting typed wrong.
I'm just telling you what I'm reading.
I know. I'm not. I'm just saying we did actually take a commission action, if I remember right. An ordinance changed like 6 weeks ago to change it to human resources.
Yeah, we did. You're absolutely right. I'm wrong.
No,
Okay.
let's.
I can change.
I know. We.
State code doesn't say human resources.
I know it says personnel. Personnel director.
No, I mean on the closed session.
Well, the state law referring to
On state
our
law.
office still refers to it as personnel office. Yeah. If she wants to call it HR, great. Just keep the benefits going and get us paid on time.
Forever.
Well, and I told her, she says, I'm not
What
going
can
to
I
write
do
her
to
up. I
help
said,
you with that?
oh, you're
Is that
going to write her up.
okay?
I said, Tammy, I said, for somebody who struggled with getting people, I said, she is one of the 5 people we've identified potentially as losing their job because of the downsides. I said, you have to
It just-
document that and write her up.
Right,
I
it
said,
brings
I'm
it
gonna
back. I
fire her, but
love that
write it
legislation,
up.
so just
and write
let
her
me
up
know
and
what
say,
we can do
obviously, you
to
made a
help
mistake.
pound the pulpit on that
Can't
one
happen again, 'cause
to
county's got a
assist
big
in whatever
liability.
ways beneficial.
He's like, okay. Like, it's not that tough to, you don't have to be mean. Robin knew she made the mistake.
Are you ready, Renee?
I guess we don't need these on. Boy, I sure wish there were a way for these to like fold down when they're not on.
We're gonna look at it so we could have them down here, go from there to there.
Or even on swivels.
Ready? Is it on? I don't think it's on yet.
And the deeds.
The DeHart deeds.
The 8, 9, and 11.
Yep.
Use approvals subject to attorney review.
Yes. The mics are on.
Are they on now? Okay. Here. Can you hear me back there, Robert? Robert can't hear me, so I don't think they're on yet.
Lisa.
They don't push it down.
Lisa. Yeah, they're on.
Green.
Oh. Can't pull it forward.
No, it only tilts like this much.
Yeah. Okay. Now can you hear me, Robert? There we go. Okay. Good morning. welcome to our Board of County Commissioners meeting this morning. It's good to have you here. And we will start, as always, with a prayer, reading, or thought, and a pledge of allegiance. And we are looking for those who would be willing to participate with us in this meeting and volunteer to do one or the other. If you'd just raise your hand and state which one. Sheriff, the pledge? Okay, I've got a pledge. How about a prayer, reading, or thought? Any volunteers for that? Oh, thank you.
Robert Moore, County Attorney's Office. Our dearest Heavenly Father, we're thankful for this day. We're thankful for this wonderful country which we have to live in. We're thankful for this great county that we live in, and that we can be participants in this government process. We pray that Thou would bless us this day with Thy Spirit. Bless us that we might make good and wise decisions, that Thou would bless all those who so willfully protect our freedoms here in this great nation. And we pray that Thou would bless our county commission and all those that lead and guide our cities and counties and states and federal government. That Thou would bless them with great knowledge and with wisdom as they direct the affairs of this great nation. We love Thee. We're thankful for Thy beautiful Son, and we say these things in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen.
In the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you for participating with us in that. We will now go through our consent agenda, which has 22 items, and we'll be pulling from consent a few items. And before that, maybe if I can just mention again about comment anytime during an agenda item. If there is an agenda item you'd like to speak on, or after we've gone through consent, please come up, state your name, and you can talk on that item, and we will have public comment at the end as well. So with that on consent, I'd like to hold number 1. Number 2 has been requested that we continue for a week. Okay. So we can continue that for 1 week. If we could hold number 3. If we could continue number 7 for 1 week. It only uploaded the odd number pages in the document. So if we could get the even number on there. And that's all. Number 7 only had the odd number pages on, didn't have the even number from the document. And that's all I had. Commissioners, was there others on consent that you
I
wanted
just
to
had
pull?
3.
3? You had 3? Okay. Then from,
Sorry, Commissioners, on with respect to consent number 8 and 9,
10
and 10, and 11, excuse me. My office would like to have the opportunity to review those. I think you can leave them on consent. I have done a cursory review. There are some additional things I want to look at, but if you could approve them subject to my review and modification as to, I think there's a date correction that has to be in there, things like that, but it's nothing that it's going to change what you're doing here today. So,
subject to,
legal review.
oh, okay.
If you're
Is there
okay
any
with that.
reason why we couldn't continue that for 1 week and just have is there stipulations in it that would cause any problems?
I would much rather.
Now that we're high tech, you got to come on up.
Gary Ratcliffe, County Surveyor's Office. I'd much rather, these types of things that Rob and I talked about prior to this meeting are quite simple things. Quick things, grantor, grantee information on one case, just an adjustment. in the verbiage there, and,
So these were more at your request, or you identified them?
yeah, county attorney, called one of them to my attention this morning, so.
Yeah, I just wonder, is there an urgency for
Oh,
these to
I
be
think
done this week or next?
I think the city on the one would like to have that expedited as soon as possible. I think probably the property owner as well, but I guess if it's pushed back a week, it's pushed
I
back a
guess
week.
what our concern, well, I should speak for myself. I guess the only concern is when it says legal review, it's fine to change a date, because we could actually go in and approve them with a date change, right? But if there's other things that come up, we'd like an opportunity to make sure
Oh, that's fine.
that's all we're saying.
And there
So
may be more than that date change until they've looked at
Right.
it. We don't know, so.
So if there's a full legal review needed, then
Yeah, I just
just
continue
for
for 1 week. That was number 8, 9, 10, 11. Okay, so continue those for 1 week. Okay, and then all the others on consent. Now, from our regular agenda to consent, maybe I stated that wrong. That gets a little confusing. But I mean, the ones we'd like to hold on our regular agenda and all the rest will go to consent, I'd like to hold number 1.
So can I make a suggestion on number 1? There's a couple things I found that I think are gonna probably not be able to be resolved in here. Maybe we can continue that for 1 week and still have the discussion, or do you still want to have a discussion then maybe?
I'd like a
I'd
little
like the
discussion. I think there's.
That's fine.
Yeah,
'Cause there's
there's
more
some
than one
things,
thing for me, so.
Well, right,
Yeah.
I'm just saying there's,
I think there's some direction that needs to be given.
okay,
From my perspective.
okay.
And then I'm fine with 2 going to consent unless another you want to. But the
Yeah,
questions got resolved along the way. Okay, and then we'll wait on the closed meetings. Okay, going back to now number 1, which was to approve and authorize the chair to sign the Beckstead Agricultural Protection Area, the notice of creation and so forth in there. There's a couple of issues. The very first grouping in there had some words that were wrong. Down at the bottom, before the notary, it has the foregoing instrument was acknowledged before me on this blank day of blank 2016 by myself, William C. Lee, Vice Chairman of Utah County Commission. So the year's wrong on there, and
Peggy Kelsey from staff. I did give Renee a clean copy this morning. I did correct that to 2017, and then the vice chair, I took that out. I apologize for that.
okay. Yeah,
Those were the 2 things. Yeah, I gave her a clean copy.
just put me in last year. That's all right. If we want to go back there.
Well, the copy I'm looking up that got uploaded also says we all voted yes already. Is that always true on the finding of facts before we sign them?
Oh, I think we have to sign it.
It does
We have
say
to-
yes.
It says yay, but we do have to sign it. And then second, my concern let me get to the right thing. On the findings and fact, my concern in here is that it repeatedly uses language when it comes to the road, on the findings and facts and on the conclusions of law and the decision, which appears like it's saying that the road dedication has been agreed to, and that future down the road, let's say 15 years from now, these can be looked at in the sense of, well, you can't stand in the way of anything in the way of expansion of the road. And that caused a little bit of concern for me, because I don't think that was necessarily the intent of the commission. I think it was to remove that from, being included in the agricultural protection?
So it is removed from being in the agricultural protection. We did have to acknowledge that there was a modification request made by
Right.
Public Works, which we did. Mr. Beckstead did comment that he would not stand in the way of a road.
He'd be willing to sell when the time
Yes,
came.
he did
Well,
say that, and the
no.
commission,
He did not. He said they can request it or not, but I am not selling the property. That was the words that I heard.
you're correct, but he did say he would not stand in the way of the county looking at,
road right
the
of
road,
way.
road right away. And I know that the commission at the time, as I was sitting here, seemed to be, that was a point that they thought was helpful. Just because as I listened to the discussion that was going back and forth, and again, as far as, this doesn't change anything.
Well,
All
it doesn't
does-
change it now, but I want you to put your other hat on 15 years from now, and when the county comes down and says,
Said you won't be a hindrance.
you said you would not be a hindrance, therefore, by this conclusion of law and this findings and facts, we have something over your head. Is that true?
That would be just a reminder to him. Honestly, it doesn't do anything else than that. Because you did not accept out the roads, it has no, honestly, legal effect other than to
Then why would we
remind
put it
him.
in?
Yeah.
Just because he made that suggestion in the commission meeting, and you can always strike it if you don't like it. Certainly.
I don't mind it being in kind of the findings part where he did say that.
the number
I
14.
just don't like it when it's in the decision and the conclusion of law.
Okay.
See,
If you
and
want
I-
to move
and
it, that's fine.
See, for me, I'm kind of okay with the second so number 2, where the engineer's office says it, right?
Because
and then-
we have to acknowledge that.
Right.
do.
And then number 8, where it says, but the application without the exclusion from the commission, we don't want it in there. It's 14 that I personally would like to strike, because that's the part to me that kind of says, if we strike 14 and renumber them all the way back up, then, in the findings portion, I'm talking.
And that's your call. He did
I know
suggest
he
that
did.
in the public hearing,
And
and
I
and that was
think-
acknowledging that.
And I'm actually fine with 14 if we take out the word consent.
Okay?
Yeah.
Because I think that's subjective, that the word consent. But then if you go down, and then I think on the conclusions of law and the,
3.
under the conclusions of law and the decision, there's reference to that as well, referring back to the findings and so forth. If those were taken out, I'd be fine.
Yeah, these are your findings, so you can take those out if you'd like to. So your suggestion is to remove the word consent from 14
On the findings,
on finding number 14.
consented, yes.
Okay? And then also on conclusion
But what's the word
number
we want to
8.
replace it with,
Me-
or to make sense? Intended? No.
Because,
An
I mean,
option
he,
would be, at the public hearing, the applicant stated that they would not be using their ag protection area, et cetera.
Yeah, I'm more okay with that. The applicant stated not to using their agricultural protection status for property to the proposed expansion.
So it could
See,
be,
I kind of like to strike out as a hindrance too.
Yeah.
So if we do that,
Your call.
so take out consented, take out as a hindrance, and replace consented with stated.
so at the public hearing, the applicant stated that they would not be using their agricultural protection status
For the property.
for the property.
To the proposed expansion of the rights of way at that address.
You probably need to replace hindrance with another word. As an impediment or as an obstacle, or, I mean, it's sort of the same.
well, that kind of gets to the same, yeah.
I was going after what he said.
I know.
And
At
he
the
did
public
say,
And the
I mean,
verbiage he used was that verbiage pretty closely from what my recollection is.
Do you want to just change the first part?
If you
and leave
recall, he
hindrance?
even consented to
It just sounds-
giving the property if you were to grant a variance. I mean, he said that as well.
Sure, but it just sounds a little more harsh than the nature of how he was willing to still be a partner with the county, and I think that's.
and I don't want to try to rewrite history or trying to think of what he actually said, because when we did ask those questions, you know, he was fine with leaving that right of way in there. But I did hear him say that he was not gonna sell the property. And I think that needs to be
He
probably
did say that
in the findings as well.
But later on, he did say that, except if you were to grant him a variance. He specifically stated that
Right.
on the record. That
For
if-
his ag protection.
Correct.
Right.
Because you'd have to find a variance in order to do that.
Yeah,
Yeah. But we're not here trying to acquire his property.
Right.
So this is just an ag protection. All I was trying to do was to capture what he said a little bit. It seemed like that was something the commission was interested in at the time. And if you're not, then you can pull that out, or we can modify it in whatever way you'd like.
So on number 3 then, in the conclusions, are we just saying the application to create the agriculture protection area should be approved without any modifications?
yep, and then put a
Period.
period there.
Period. Okay?
And then, let's see, there was a reference
Into the decision.
in the decision too.
Okay.
Let's see, yeah, in the decision, you
line,
can see
sorry.
it, yeah, about the third line or so. Where
And
it
let-
says consented, the applicant
And let's
consented
change
again.
that to match what we did in the findings, the verbiage. Renee, does that make sense to you? Because this motion's gonna be maybe not the
talked about.
finest.
You do have time. If you want to continue this a week, you could do that with these changes.
I
or
don't
we
think
could-
we
or-
need to.
Now, Commissioner Ivy mentioned he had some other concerns. Have we addressed all
Oh, this
those?
is
or
on-
is-
That's on
No,
the
that's on,
ordinance.
no, that's not on this one.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Anything else, commissioners?
I'm just wondering if on 14, if we just worded it, at the public hearing, the applicants committed to working with the county in regards to the proposed expansion of the right-of-ways for that stated address. If
Worked for me too.
that delivers the message that there's a commitment there from them to working through those issues.
Sure.
Yeah, and that's all I was trying to capture.
Right.
I
But-
heard
but
that
it
from
makes
him.
it less,
Hey,
appear
so did you
less
get what he
binding.
said? That sounded really nice to me. Okay. So we'll change that verbiage for 14. Well, okay.
So at
let
the
me make a
public
motion.
hearing, the applicants committed to working with the county in regards to the proposed expansion of the right-of-ways for 10,000 south and 4,350 west.
Okay.
And I think in the decision, you can just put a period after the agricultural protection area without modification, like we did on, and put a period and then cross out the rest as it refers to the hindrance and the consent and talking about the road in specific, and then I think it also refers back.
Okay, so I'm gonna attempt a motion if we're ready. Okay, I will move that we approve and authorize the commission chair to sign the Beckstead Agriculture Protection Area with the change as stated by Commissioner Ivy for number 14 in the findings of fact, putting a period after modifications and striking the rest in number 3 under conclusions of law, and putting a period after without any modifications in the decision and striking the rest of that sentence.
Second?
I got a motion and a second to approve and authorize the commission chair to sign the Beckstead Agricultural Protection Area as modified. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
That passes 3-0.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, on number 3, I saw some comments on here suggesting that we hold this until it's legal. And it seemed like a pretty good comment. And so I thought maybe we ought to have some discussion on what that is and why we would not hold it until it's legal.
So I was the one who made that comment, Carl Holland, Deputy County Attorney. Currently, Utah County Code does not allow anyone to build or to use a pit privy, which is what this is.
Even though the Forest Service does them
Yeah.
all over our county.
Even though we have one on the other side of the same park.
Right.
Yeah, the health department is currently working on creating a regulation which would allow these types of privies, because this is an enclosed
Only vaulted,
capsule,
yes.
a vaulted privy. But due to the scheduling of the Board of Health, that will not go into effect until August at the earliest. And so the question was just, do we want to purchase this now and hold on to it for a few months, or do we want to wait until closer to when it can be installed? I really don't care. I just wanted to point that out to the
This
commission so you
includes
can
the
make the
installation.
choice.
So the other problem is, and I'll just identify it right now, is there's one in American Fork that's leaking that they came to me about. this is also, and the commission is aware, we're working on this and we've identified it. But the reality is the county still can't issue a permit for American Fork City to even fix theirs, and they want to, and there's a funding source. So it's kind of like we're stuck between a rock and a hard place on this one. So it's kind of like, do we look the other way because it's what's right and in the public's best interest? Because the attorneys keep telling us there's no
Well,
out.
If
The commission
it's
can't
leaking,
overrule
then
its
there
own
is an
ordinance,
out.
and
If it's leaking, then the health department might be able to do something about it. Latest information that the health department got that I had heard was that it's not leaking, but that they just want to replace it.
okay.
And so that, if it's leaking,
I don't
that
want
would
to know how
probably
we know
change things.
if the vaults are leaking or not, but
Richard?
Yes.
What would be the financial implications on waiting until this particular law was amended?
I don't think there will be any financial implications. What we'll have is we'll have a restroom at Vivian Park that will not be operational throughout the summer. The goal was to try to have it operational before Memorial Day weekend. The restroom has been in place for a number of years. It's had actually a composting system for the waste in that facility. It had quit functioning. We've actually removed that. This would replace that composting operation with a vault. We do have current contracts in place with pumping companies. We do have another vault toilet on the same site, and we also have the same operation down at Nuns, just down Canyon a little ways. Very same system that we have in that facility.
So let me ask you a question. So if we won't have a facility up there that can be used through the summer until this is installed, would you be suggesting that we actually buy this and install it illegally, and so it can be used during the summer? That's the question.
Yep. That's the only way we can get it
Pretty
done.
much where we're at. If we want the restroom operational for this summer, that's what we'd have to do.
Yeah, I can't go there, but I don't know if anybody
Well,
else can, but
so
I don't want to do it
our
illegal.
only other option, so the question is, I mean, if we don't have operational facilities, right? We know what people do with their waste. What's a bigger risk to our environment? So the problem is we can always strike our own ordinance. See, I'm kind of struggling with the fact that we have a board of
Why do we have to wait till August? That's the bigger question for me. Why, well, if we have
Why-
kind of
why
an
can't we just
emergency
make the
basis going,
ordinance?
Yeah,
why
I
can't
don't
we
know
change
that
it?
the Board of Health took this very serious, and I don't know that we can't call them an emergency Board of Health meeting. I don't know what the policy is. I'm new to that. I'm looking at Ralph for
Call a Board
direction.
of Health meeting the same as you do a county commission meeting, so you
Okay.
could do it on emergency.
See, so my
basis if
suggestion
you
is
wanted.
after we have that hearing, I think the end of May, right, which is our next one, we have a 30-day mandatory something. Is that what it is, posting wise?
You just have to advertise it in the paper a couple times.
Okay, so the soonest, I mean, we should do it soon. They were all concerned with potential leakage up American Fork Canyon and these same things, so
This could be done by summer, spring.
that's what I'm
Yeah,
hoping.
it sounds like if you wanted to schedule an emergency, want to go out of typical order, you could probably have it done in June.
Well, and another solution you could always consider is having porta potties brought in to serve on a temporary basis. It costs a little more, requires a little more maintenance, but that is a suggestion.
Yeah.
Ralph Clegg.
That's a great suggestion, thank you.
Okay. So maybe I guess that's the direction we're giving you as far as, Carl, since you're also the attorney in Board of Health, and Ralph, let's work on making sure we got all that in order so that we can make sure the legal is done, so the commission can address this as soon as we can in mid-June, it sounds like would be the
I
earliest.
believe that Health Department already has the proposed regulation drafted.
Yes, I'm
and
sure they
so
do.
it's just a matter of waiting for the next meeting.
But I think if we can start working on noticing and letting the Board of Health know that we potentially want to have another meeting immediately following to address just this issue, I think we'll find we can get there, because that's kind of how I read the room when I was there.
And it's not just us, I mean, we have
Right.
other cities, and
Right.
we got, this
And
is
with the
not just
construction
a,
season, we need to move on that as quick as we can, and
it's coming like the water's coming off the mountain here, so.
Yeah.
You gotta take care of it. So it'd probably be in the best interest then to strike, I'm assuming, maybe possibly.
unless
that
we
would-
want to approve it pending our ordinance change sometime down the road, but
Would they hold their bid for that, or?
We have to talk to them. We have not discussed that with them.
What's your preference?
My personal feeling would be that it'd probably be in our best interest to acquire the necessary supplies to make sure installation isn't completed until,
Do that.
until the law's adjusted, and in the interim operate off of a portable system.
Do that.
So we're gonna approve the purchase of this, but not the installation, right? That's
I can make
the
that.
motion.
I'll move that we approve consent agenda item number 3 with the understanding that construction and implementation of the facilities are not to be completed until the ordinance change is approved by the Board of Health. And in the interim, Public Works is authorized to utilize temporary porta potties in that particular area.
Second.
I've got a motion and a second to approve the agreement as stated, number 3, with the modifications discussed. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. That passes 3-0. Okay, we continued that. Okay, regular agenda item. I keep wanting to pull this thing down. Number 1, and I'm wondering if, instead of having a long discussion on this, as I read through this, I didn't see anything changed from what I thought the discussion was that we were having with it. I was hoping, at least at the minimal, we would have had something in here that was showing us a difference where we were taking and not crossing out the county commission. And so I'm just looking to see if the other commissioners agree if we should maybe put this off a week and have another red line that actually takes that language out.
Yeah.
Is that?
That was my concern because
that's-
it struck out Board of County Commissioners, created this land use authority and for large scale developments now. And I was like, well, that's not what I remember us talking about.
Yeah, on both large and the minor subdivisions as well. I see this as I read down through it, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I see that we have the planning commission, and now we're substituting the planning commission with a committee, a review committee is what it looks like, because they have to go visit these people on an individual basis, and then we're substituting the commission with a zone administrator. And so I'm struggling with the efficiencies on some of this, but more important for me is that I think we felt that we didn't want the county commission to be taken out of the process.
Bryce Armstrong, staff. Just a couple of questions or answers on what Brandon also answer. Relative to not proposing a new version, that would require us to go back to the Planning Commission. And so if that is the direction, then we would need this referred back to the Planning Commission, and then we would draft whatever changes that you would suggest and come back with the Planning Commission's recommendation based on those that revision. Relative to your second question,
Well, on that one, help me through this one, because I'm not sure. I mean, this policy on this, I don't necessarily think that it has to go through the planning commission on this. We
It
could
does have to go
modify it.
back to the Planning Commission, but you can make your proposal and then send that back to the Planning Commission for review. But it will have to go back to the Planning Commission. We do have an ordinance that does say that after it comes up from the Planning Commission to the County Commission, if you make any modifications, it has to go back.
So we could do the modifications
But you can go ahead and make your
approve it
modifications.
and send it back to
and
them.
set- and refer, and then take those modifications and refer it back as modified, and then let them review that modification, yes.
Okay.
We could do it that
So
way.
Yeah,
if we modify it though and send it back, and it comes to them as, because they're the ones that refer it to us. So why are we modifying and sending it back for their review?
That's in our statute, in our ordinance, county ordinance, land use ordinance, because they are the recommending body. So you can change it, the best approach would be to change it exactly the way you would like it now, and then send that back to them for their review.
Does that mean amending that ordinance where we have to send it back?
And what happens if they accept it, or what happens if they reject it?
It doesn't matter, because that's a recommendation back to you. So you've changed it now, so they just are commenting and recommending on your modified proposal. And then when that comes back, you can accept their recommendation or not.
and then accept what we modified it as potentially.
And then
See,
you
the
can adopt
concern
it
with
when you
that is
send it to
this
them.
is all time. And there are people out here that are sending us emails, and they're concerned that they're trying to get into the building season this year on some of these, and we're talking 45 days. I don't know, I mean, they meet tonight, right? So we're talking 45 days from now.
Or a review, for a subdivision,
No,
application or the
well, no, I'm
review?
talking about before it goes before the planning
It'll
commission.
go back in May. I mean, we can refer it back. Once your revisions or your suggestions return back to the planning commission.
I'm just being sensitive that there are people out there that are trying to get
Absolutely.
going with projects, and they only have short windows of building seasons. And here we are bouncing back and forth, waiting for somebody to review
Absolutely.
something that we have already reviewed, then it seems clunky.
State code allows what you guys have referred to make your revisions and approve it as you see fit.
And you-
Our land use ordinance is more restrictive,
Do
basically.
we have to wait till May?
Yes.
Yeah, because it's got to have it's got to be noticed for 24 hours.
They- Oh,
Well,
'cause they meet
Call a
tonight.
special
But I'm not
meeting.
willing to approve this like it is.
I'm not.
I'm
approving
not
it like
either, and
this.
that's what's, we've
So-
already
so-
sat on this
So
thing
it
for
sounds
2
like part of what we need to address is our own restrictiveness in our own ordinance.
Yeah,
Yeah, and that would require a text amendment to be consistent with state code.
it's what, but
Right.
see,
Which,
same problem we just had with our preview vote.
Just to mention, those that are waiting can go through the normal
still go through the
process, which
normal
we currently
process.
have, and they can go through that now. They don't have to wait for this minor subdivision change.
But if they're looking at a minor subdivision,
They
where do
can
go?
do that, but again, they can go through the full process, the normal process that we're going through now.
Right.
They don't have to wait for this, but obviously many do want to wait for it because it will have some, it'll shrink some times, it'll do some things that'll be beneficial to them.
okay, I think the first thing is we probably, sounds like, need to address another area of code and ordinance in the county. To get the ball rolling, I'm happy to make my recommendations to you at this particular point in time to potentially send back to the planning commission. On page 11, where we're striking the county commission in the large-scale development, I would like them unstruck. I think it's essential that the county commission has oversight there. On page 12, I think it's essential, again, in our minor subdivisions, that at minimum, the county commission have a call-up authority, and my preferred preference would be that these are still reviewed by the county commission. I do have a question on page 23 as a follow-up notice. Did we need to address the time frame in this to ensure that the public notice, the public has enough time frame to, after receiving notification, to comment back before any approval by staff would be authorized? I think that this is problematic in the 10-day period, right? I don't want a notice to come out, someone from the public get the notice and not have comment time back prior to staff approval, right? If you get it done in a week and they're only getting it in 10 days, that's a problem. So we just need to
Be a
add.
miracle mile if we did. if it
Well,
happened,
I know
but
that,
still,
but,
I understand.
but that's, I recognize it's a miracle, but still that's problematic in the verbiage as it's currently stated. We
3
need-
days seems sufficient. I could send it out the first day if you wanted, whatever you want.
Yeah, I mean, I think if we bump the notification up and then have a small time window there after the notification sent, maybe 2 weeks, right? It's a suggestion. I think we just need, that verbiage needs clarified so that the public has adequate time to respond.
Commissioner, I think that some of those concerns, they'll go away because you guys want to review this anyway. So ultimately, you're going to be making the final call. And so these issues about staff hurrying, getting it done and getting it out is not going to happen because it's going to come before you eventually anyway.
Yeah, but we're significantly decreasing the time because it could be potentially just a week to get on our commission. So it comes before our agenda pretty quickly.
But they will, you're going to have it on the agenda. It's going to be noticed up. It's going to be opportunities for them to come and speak to these applications. If that's what your proposal is to have you guys make the decisions on these applications for minor subdivisions, then some of these other provisions in here that had staff making decisions is really not going to be happening. It's all going to be back to you.
Fair enough. And so that's one area I'm concerned. I did have a question, my notes here. On page 31, and this just might be my own understanding of current state statute. Where in the state law is state authorization for a planned unit development? Has that been authorized by state statute? Because my current understanding is state statute only allowed for subdivision and condominiums. But this exemption in number 3, obviously this isn't a red line change, but this was just in review of this ordinance. I was just curious on that, if that's authorized by state statute.
Yeah, it's a type of subdivision, really, and it's described in our land use ordinance.
Okay.
So there are some
And that-
different requirements for planned unit developments, but
And
it is
that-
a type of subdivision.
It
So
is a
it's
type of subdivision by state statute.
almost every jurisdiction has those.
Okay, that's, again, my question is just if we're cleaning it up, I want to make sure we're cleaning it up and it's
Sure.
fully in
Good
accordance
question.
with state statute. And that was one particular area I did have a question on that, if that was consistent. I love the idea of cleaning them up, so. And that was one where I had a question. On page 37, again here, as we're going through the engineer and on the road provision, again, I feel there needs to be some type of elected official oversight on this, whether that's the commission or the county clerk signing off. You know, I have a great amount of respect for, there was another area where the clerk came in. I have a great respect for Richard and trust his judgment, but I feel accountability to the public still needs to come back to an elected official. And so on page 37, again, I would note oversight on that particular page. And then question on page 52, and this is just a curiosity question, not necessarily a change recommendation. Why did we come up with the $1,000 in that particular change? However, for minor subdivisions, only a 2-year bond may be approved by the county engineer in the amount of $1,000 per acre in lieu of certification. Like, how do we?
That's been in the ordinance for years. There was
Well,
no.
I know that, but that's why.
I don't know. We'd have to do some
So-
research to find out why they came to that amount. That was just, like I said, carried over.
Definitely outdated.
And again, that's why I'm saying, hey, if we're cleaning this thing up, that was one particular area I had a question, is how did we arrive at that amount? Is it enough based on current standing? Is it too much? I don't know
Sure.
one way or another, but that was an area I thought, hey, if we're cleaning this thing up, it makes sense to review and look at that particular finding there for that dollar amount and make sure it's consistent, and not that we're just repeating and continuing to draft into our ordinance something because it's been there for 50 years.
And this is relative to the bond for noxious weeds. I
Yes,
just want to make
this
that
is
clear
relative- yeah.
for those that may be watching.
Yeah, and I appreciate that clarification. So again, and we've had a significant increase in noxious weeds, right? With Phragmites, Russian Ovs are a continuing and growing problem within the county. So is that really a sufficient amount to take care of those? Some of those removals can be very expensive, and the broader implementation, if you don't take care of Phragmites in one particular area, we're spending tens of millions of dollars at the lake. You know, I'd hate to see something underdone in another area that jeopardizes all the work there that's going there. So I would question if that's an appropriate amount and appropriate use of that bond. Those are my, those are all the ones I had notes on.
So it looks like we need to have some more communication. I've got a list as well.
Me too.
That we need to look over. And then probably have the concern is that tomorrow, this week, I mean, we're getting to, the time thing, I mean, I'm getting sensitive to this time because I know there are people out there, and like I said, I've received some emails already on this.
You're really looking to May anyway, so a 1-week continuance is not going to change. It won't speed up the process if you did continue it today for a week.
Right, I'm just trying to find time that we can actually sit down.
Oh, I see.
Because I'm gonna be at a conference for the remainder of the week too, and I don't know what the other schedules are for the commissioners.
I think we'd have a couple weeks to work that in and still meet May. And so, you know, it'd give us some time to formulate your recommendations into a amended version. So we'd have a couple weeks to to accomplish that.
If, and I'll throw this out here, if we had a text amendment that changed some of the ordinance next week on there as well, so that it didn't have to go back to the planning commission, could we do it sooner?
I think this would be considered a pending ordinance change, and so it would be subjected to the current ordinance in place. It kind of freezes that ordinance. This amendment is subject to the current requirements in
Well,
place.
then let's strike it, bring you the other text amendment, and bring us back a different ordinance.
We'd still be going back to the planning commission, I think, in that scenario, because it would be a new text amendment.
Okay, so then let's vote and deny it, change the ordinance, and then start over, but you already have a draft.
Well, it'd be a new text amendment, and a new text amendment goes before the planning commission.
Not if we change the ordinance. That's the ordinance we want to see
The ordinance we're
next
changing
week.
is a revision of a referral. That's the state code requires.
What we're
it.
saying is we want to address the ordinance that gives the commission, who is responsible for the people, the authority to change the ordinance, be accountable for the ordinance, and not have it reviewed, but subject to, reviewed by the planning commission.
And
So
that
the
process
first
that process is spelled out in state code. I think.
You're talking about the referral back the second time?
Yes.
Yeah, the second time.
That we could address.
That we can address.
So
So if you want to continue for 2 weeks to give you time, it would be best if you refer back to them a complete ordinance with all the changes exactly the way you want it, and we could add that into it
Okay.
with regard to the second review, modifying that, and then that would go back to them, and then it would come back to you for a final action.
Under our current ordinance right now, when you do go back, it's actually more of an expedited, so you don't have to wait all the normal timeframes that a normal applicant would come in. But as a commission, if you refer things to the planning commission, it typically goes on to their next agenda. And so that's why if we wait 2 weeks, we have come back with another red line that tries to address your issues, and also to address that other issue of referral back for the future. It won't affect this one necessarily, but it would affect future referrals.
Well, and I'll bring this up, just showing a little bit of lack of confidence in that. At the beginning of the year, we had an amendment come before us, and there was some concerns on it, in which it was stated that it needed to go back to the planning commission. I think you remember which one. And it was said, okay, well, this will go to the planning commission and then come back to us. We have not seen it yet. So there's not a high degree of confidence that this is actually going to happen. Because there was some wording in there. We looked at it and we said, well, actually, this has to go back to the planning commission before it can come. And we said, okay, let's let it go through that process. We haven't seen it. It's been months. So let's,
I'm not sure we know what that is.
well, you remember the conversation
I
with it.
remember the conversation.
I don't know if you remember the conversation or not, but
I don't remember, it has to be an official referral from the commission to go to the planning commission. So if there's something we missed, I apologize. I'm not aware of any.
I believe it was the flood change, and we were going to overhaul the entire ordinance.
Yes,
and
that's
we were
the
going to
one.
incorporate. We had training with the state floodplain coordinator and FEMA last week, and so we were waiting for that process because we're going to overhaul the entire section. And so it's
and
a
if
pretty
you
big
remember,
project.
there was some wording in there
Yes,
that
sir.
was outside of what the planning commission
That's
actually looked
related
at.
to accessory structures and agricultural structures.
And if I remember, yeah, exactly. And we said, well, we'd like to change this, and the wording
Absolutely.
was, and we said, well, let's take that back to the planning commission and have it come back to us. And we haven't seen it.
I understood that as being the entire, we were gonna do that all at once, so we were trying to capture all of that, and then we had that marked down, but we can bring that one section back immediately if that's, your choice, so.
Okay, well, okay, what do you want to do?
Would you prefer a strike and put it on in 2 weeks, or continue for 2 weeks? What?
Continue 2 weeks.
Okay. Motion to continue regular agenda item 1 for 2 weeks.
Second.
I got a motion and a second to continue regular agenda item number 1 for 2 weeks. All in favor, say aye.
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 Passes 3-0. Okay, I guess we're down to our closed meetings now. Do we need number 3, 4, 5, 6?
We can strike 3 and 4.
Okay. So I'll move that we strike regular agenda items number 3 and 4.
Second?
I got a motion and a second to strike agenda items number 3 and 4. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Passes 3-0.
Move that we approve and set a date, time, and location for a closed meeting to discuss the character, professional competence, or physical or mental health of an individual or individuals for today's date at this location following the completion of the regular agenda.
Second?
We had a motion and a second to approve and set a date, time, and location as stated number 5. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. That passes 3-0.
I'll move that we approve and set a date, time, and location for a closed meeting for a strategy session to discuss pending or reasonably imminent litigation for today's date at this location following the completion of the regular agenda.
Second.
We had a motion and a second to approve and date, time, and location for a closed meeting as stated number 6 on the regular agenda. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. That passes 3-0.
Not seeing Bree here, there might have been a miscommunication because of the move, so. Okay,
Okay.
then motion to strike work session until further notice.
Second?
And a motion and a second to strike the work session. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. That passes 3-0. Are there any public comment? Seeing none, we'll move into our closed meetings. Thank you. I got something in my throat.